The other day, I was watching an interview with Jay Leno, who goes around and looks at interviews people around their cars and stuff like that. Now, he actually wasn't really interviewing Elon around his cars. He was interviewing him around another vehicle, his spaceships. Yeah, he was going on this tour through SpaceX and where they're building everything. It was absolutely incredible. Great interview. You should go check that out. It's available on YouTube. One thing that I really love about Elon is he is so aligned with his purpose. He can focus on the mission, not necessarily the money, which is easy to say when you're one of the richest men on the planet. But he does live it out by living a very reasonably simple lifestyle, selling all his possessions, living in like a $40,000 house and all that sort of stuff. But it's really interesting that he says, look, it's our job to push forward, to innovate, to change the combustible engine and to change space travel and change how we live on different planets, everything like that. We can't do that if we're all stuck behind patterns. Dr. Rod, what's your take on being a leader and innovating and, I suppose, finding that balance between the protection of your innovation but moving forward and not looking backwards?
Well, look, there's no doubt that Elon Musk is an innovator. He's the innovator's innovator. There's no doubt about that. And, of course, he moves so fast that it's quite true. Going through the patenting process would really slow him down and would probably be deleterious to his own business model.
Yeah.
So I have no doubt that in his context, what he says is absolutely true. And it's really refreshing to hear somebody who doesn't want to hide behind the protection of patents.
And that's part of the way we need to be in the kingdom is we can't, yes, we need to protect ourselves. Yes, you need to protect with something. Protect your brand. Do everything you can. I own all the URLs, every possible URL I can of that. Or we have the trademark of the, but then when it comes to protecting that, you know what? Is it really worth the legal fight to fight other people? Or should we all be championing and encouraging each other along the way? Elon Musk finally, after what's it been, months and months and months, finally bought Twitter for $44 billion. It is now a privately owned company again, and he is shaking things up. What happens from a governance standpoint, first of all, in an organization when there's a big shift like this?
Well, governance still has to go on. So there still has to be governance. And governance, among other things, is responsible for culture, is responsible overall for policy, is responsible overall for strategy. So those are three primary areas that are the province of governance. And whether or not you have a board or a single person at the helm, the role of governance still has to be carried out. So, yes, it's understandable that the new owner wants a change in culture. Culture does come from the top.
Yep.
It must. It's not. It will bubble up from below, by the way, but it won't necessarily be the culture that you want. So, culture is something that really has to come from the top. It's difficult to impose. It has to be modelled. It has to be reflected in policy. It has to be reflected in mission. It has to be reflected in strategy. And then you've got to make sure that the people you employ are people whose own personal values align with the culture that you either want to maintain or are trying to establish.
Now, this has been floating around for a few weeks now, actually, where Elon Musk was being interviewed by the BBC's James Clayton. Now, if you haven't watched this interview, I encourage you, watch the interview. It is actually a really, really good interview. I think that James did a great job with a lot of the interview. There is a few parts of it that I think that he kind of tripped up on, and he's been raked through the coals, so to speak, with his responses, because what he was doing is he was trying to challenge Elon Musk about what's happening on Twitter and how Twitter's just become a free-for-all and it's aggressive and there's abuse on there and it's just like the wild, wild west on there. And he kept making these generic I've now lost that word, but very generic, nondescript, non-specific claims of like, oh, I always see this stuff that happens whenever I go on there. And then Elon Musk did this amazing thing in response to a critic where he didn't just turn around and just go, well, yeah, all right, and then try to get defensive. He responded beautifully. Dr. Rod, what did you think about this interview and what do you feel about the Socratic method?
Oh, it's great. And I do think it's important that you clarify terms, you clarify definitions, you clarify examples. I think Elon Musk did a really good job with this. But a couple of other things really stood out for me, which I think are important lessons for leaders. One was, it certainly appeared to me that he gave honest answers when he got specific, direct questions. One of which was, do you sleep in the office 5 nights a week? He said, I do sleep in the office, but not 5 nights a week. And he said, he actually explained where he went to sleep. He said, there's a library on the 7th floor. There's a couch in the library and I go to sleep there sometimes. So he really laid that whole myth to rest, that he slept in the office all the time. It was a great response.
Sometimes when we are being approached by critics, how about we try to find a common ground first? How about we try to define what is actually going on, what the actual problem is, so we can come to a proper solution together rather than just trying to prove ourselves right. And then maybe we can respond to critics a lot better. And hey, maybe that might lead you on a path to being one of the most wealthiest people on the planet. A year ago, Matt Walsh from the Daily Wire launched a documentary which was called What is a Woman? It's a pretty clear question, clear statement. But it's interesting how this one question of, what is a woman? What defines a woman? Causes so much controversy. You see so many people being asked this in the public, and they either spit out some random, crazy, like ideological, gobbledygook, like talking back on yourself and just talking in circles, crazy talk. This is a very awkward situation where there's something that, let's call it, Elon may not necessarily agree with, but he agrees with free speech and he, allows them to speak out their truth or speak out, share their content. But he gets all this pressure from internal of Twitter, external from media and everything like that to restrict this hateful speech, everything like that. How should we, because, obviously we're here talking about these awkward things, but how do we as leaders in an everyday environment, in our businesses, in our church, in our community groups, how do we as leaders stand up and promote something that is that may be controversial and cause quite a negative backlash?
Well, I think the first thing to do is to go with your convictions. Be convicted of something and be prepared to stand up for your conviction. And that, of course, certainly was the case with the folk at the Daily Wire. And some of our viewers might not know the Daily Wire. It's, in a sense, alternative media. It's conservative media. They're very honest about being conservative. And, I rather enjoy their podcasts.
I don't know whether you've heard much about this, but there's a bit of a feud going on. A feud between Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Meta, and Elon Musk, the CEO of everything. Just this week, last week, Zuck's released, or Meta released Threads. Instagram or Meta response to Twitter. It's meant to be this text-based, basically. It's just a copy of Twitter, and it's an extension of Instagram, but it's the same team, but it's a different app. It's a little comical. Obviously, Elon Musk is a little bit trolling, and that's just his personality. What do you take from a leadership? Like, let's not even get into the actual issues that's happening. Let's first talk about just the way that they're responding to anyone. Is this just a little bit of fun, or is this unprofessional?
Look, abstracting from the actual words that have been flying to and fro, I think more than anything, this is about marketing, really. Look, Elon Musk bought Twitter for over $40 billion, and it's probably worth about half that.
Yeah.
If it was to be sold today. So he's got a big problem. He's got to recoup his investment. And he knows that one of the ways in which he needs to do that is to make Twitter more attractive. Now, in part, of course, he's done that by giving some assurance that people who are more to the right politically, or who are more conservative in terms of their social values and ethical position and so on, he's given them some assurance that they won't be thrown off the platform.
Yeah.
My understanding is that nevertheless, the number of people using Twitter is actually falling. And I'm sure that he was concerned when, the world learnt that streams broke the record for cracking the 100 million user mark.
Yep.
They managed to do that in 5 days.
Yeah,
that's
5
right.
days, yeah. The reason why your CEO is as good as he is because he takes risk. If you try to muzzle him or chain him or put him on a leash, it's gonna cripple his ability to do what he does well. Let's talk about a really, really, really weird decision that is being made by Elon Musk, where he is promoting that he is going to rebrand Twitter to X. Obviously, we're talking about purpose, and Elon Musk was always trying to drive towards his ultimate purpose is to create this X app, right? This everything app. Well, what do you think of this situation of him trying to change Twitter and also trying to create this everything app?
Well, I think the first thing to say is it's a lot more than a rebranding exercise. It's a rebuilding the whole platform. There are risks associated with that because it won't be Twitter anymore.
No.
Neither will it. It won't be Twitter either in name or in function. So if it's very popular, and it definitely is in the United States, if it's very popular, you know what'll happen? Someone else will develop something similar. And he could lose a lot of revenue as a result of that. So there's a risk for him on the other hand, making it an everything app, and all things app could well expand his market. It's just that it won't be Twitter anymore. And people who use Twitter for Twitter purposes, they just want to tweet.
Next story that we're going to be talking about is, I don't know whether this was so much an enemy. They became an enemy. Well, they were kind of at that time, but maybe it was an enemy of society or of humankind, as Elon Musk mentions it. But Elon just recently, about a week or so ago, did this interview with Joe Rogan. Very long interview. One thing that Elon Musk was talking about is like Twitter almost became this enemy of humanity, because they were so, controlled by the government and forcing, fake news and trying to push a particular agenda. An enemy down the road that is spreading bad rumors about you, that is, they're your competition and everything like that, and they're spreading bad rumors, they're stealing your clients. Could you imagine how easy it would be to just buy them out?
Look, it's not an option for most of us, but look, if you're an Elon Musk and you feel very strongly about free speech, as he certainly does, and you're in a position, then go and do it. Now, of course, there was a period during which he was very reluctant to actually go through with that purchase, and I'm pretty certain that when he actually did purchase the platform, it was only worth about half as much as he paid. So he's certainly got a big challenge ahead of him.